Good thing. It looks like we're ready to go. Are
Okay.
you ready? If you're ready, I'm ready.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So let's start. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the IDIS.
Good thing. It looks like we're ready to go.
Okay. Do we need to tell Mark? Are we?
No, just go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to IDIS online session. Let's begin with a poll question mark. Well, before we do that, let me introduce myself first. My name is Poping Huang. I'm Senior CPD Specialist in the Entitlement Division. Join me by my colleague, Robert Peterson. Robert is the Director of States and Small Cities Division. So, Robert, please say hi.
Hi. Thank you, everyone, for joining the session. I'm going to be available to help with Q&A at the end, and you're in excellent hands with Puping. So we can kick it off.
So before we start our presentation, let's begin with a poll question. Mark, can we pull up a poll question? So the question is, IDIS is what type of a system? Accounting, reporting, or both? Looks like we have more people joining now. Okay, I'm going to pause that here. Looks like majority of the people answered both, but actually the correct answer is reporting system. So although we have a lot of financial functions in IDIS, but IDIS really is a reporting system. Let's move on, Mark. Next slide, please. Next slide. So I'm going to skip the housekeeping question and jump into presentation. So what IDIS stands for? IDIS stands for Integrated Disbursement and Information System. It is a management information system used for all CPD formula programs, CDBG, Home, ESG, HAPO Competitive, and also for Section 108 Loan Guarantee Program. There are the main purpose of IDIS Online, like this name, it's allow grantees to draw down funds. IDIS is an interface connected to the Treasury system. It's called Line of Credit Control System. So IDIS is the interface, allow user to submit vouchers, approve vouchers, and then submit to logs to get the funds to the grantee's account. The other purpose of IDIS Online is to collect and report information about CPD funded activities and also collect accomplishments. Next slide, please. So there are, for most of the users, there are 5 modules: grantee PJs, grants, main project activities, funding and draws, and a report. There are some IDIS administrator. They also have additional module, which is called admin. That's where they can create or adjust user rules, have different user rights. Most of the time, grantee will use 3 modules, which is plan project activities, funding draw, and reports. Grant module, like usually you review grants, but data are uploaded by headquarters. Next slide, please. There are 3 types of users for IDIS: grantee users, field office users, and headquarter users. Of course, grantee users enter the data, you submit action plan, comp plan in IDIS, and you set up plan activities, report accomplishments. And remember, grantee users are only users who have drawdown rights. After your comp plan, action plan submit through IDIS, the field office users will review and approve those plans. So the field office staff also enter the program year start end date into IDIS for the grantees. And also they enter that grantee contact information, address, so on, so those type of information. And then they will use IDIS to monitor activities. The headquarter users, majority of the users only have use right. However, the grant information are uploaded from headquarters. And also, if you wanted to request IDIS access, the user will submit application to headquarters. Next slide, please. So let's look at the grant management process. The grantee, when they become grantee, CPD or CDBG grantee, they will develop 3 or 5 years comp plan submitted to HUD for review. And each year, the grantee also have to submit annual action plan, describe projects and how they wanted to budget their funds for the project. And after the grant agreement signed, and then the allocation obligated in IDIS, and they will start set up activities under the project. The project is submitted through action plan and approved by, the action plan is approved by HUD field office. So after setup activities, and you can start commit funds and drawdown funds. After you draw down funds, and then as activity moving forward, making progress, you will report accomplishments. So, and then after accomplishments reported in IDIS and activity completed, you will complete activity in IDIS as well. So that marked as pretty much full life cycle of the grant. And in the end, after all the grants spent, all the national objective met for each individual activities, and then you will close out the grants. So far for the entitlement grantees, we have not started to close out grants yet, but we will do that soon. Next slide, please. So since this is for the CDBG CV grants, how are you going to apply for CDBG CV grants? By this point, all the grantees should have submitted action plan for the CDBG CV funds. So I would just like quickly go through that. To expedite the process, back in 2019, HUD allowed grantee to amend 2019 or 2020 action plan. So if you applied CV1 funds through amending 2019 action plan, for CV2 and CV3, you will amend same action plan. If you amended a 2020 plan, and then all 3 grants need to amend 2020 plan. So in the action plan, you will amend or update 3 screens. First one, 8025 administration screens. You will upload SF424, SF424D, and all the certifications, citizen participation process, all the comments you collected, and explain the reason why the comments accepted or not accepted. In AP15 screen, you will enter expected resources for CDBG-CV funds. You will use other field. And also, most important is AP35 screen. You will enter the projects that you planned for the CV funds. For the states, there's additional funds, additional screen you have to update, which is AP30, method of distribution screen have to be updated as well. Next slide, please. So after your action plan is approved, your project is submitted through AP35, and you can start set up activities. So when you set up activities, you will select project first. Under the project, you can set up one or multiple activities. Normally, project is acting like an umbrella. You have one project, but multiple activities under the project. For example, in action plan AP35, you probably have project called street improvements. But under the street improvements, in IDIS, we ask you to set like street improvements to break down by service area. So you probably have multiple activities under street improvements. For example, you have Main Street improvements, Golf Park street improvements, so on. So.
Hi, Puping.
Yes.
I wanted to make a couple comments here.
Yeah.
I heard an echo. It looks like it's fixed now. Okay, great. So in terms of the project activity setup, this is one of those things that you do it right, it's going to help with your caper. So I wanted to let everyone know on this today's session that in the Slido feature down below, so if you scroll down, there's like a blue box, and there's an ideas thread that's going on right there. And I see some folks have been contributing to it, and I really appreciate that. The Q&A is there as well. So we encourage you to use the Q&A that is down in Slido. That makes it easier for us to reply to specific questions in that instead of the chat on the right-hand side. But definitely look at that ideas thread. And there's a few ideas in there already, ways we could improve IDIS, things that you've always wanted to see, things that annoy you and want fixed. Please throw them into that chat feed, and there's some good ones in there already. You can vote for ideas you like, a little thumbs up. So we'd like to take this not just as an opportunity to familiarize you all with IDIS, especially for folks that are beginners, but for folks that have experience in the program, where we could make some improvements. So don't be shy, put your ideas in that thread. Thank you. But back to you, Puping.
Thank you, Robert. Next slide, please. Activities are where majority of IDIS reporting occurs. So grantee will set up activities, fund and draw down through activities and report accomplishments. We also measure whether the activity is eligible or not, met national objective. That's where or at the activity level. So what type of elements you have to report in IDIS is based on the matrix code and the national objective combination you selected in IDIS. and also what type of data accomplishments you have to report is also based on matrix code and national objective combination. Next slide, please. CDBG programs use matrix code to identify eligible activities. We have about more than 100 matrix code for different types of activities. Of course, we don't have matrix code for every type of matrix activities, especially for public facilities and public services. We just have matrix code for most commonly used public services. So when setting up activities, the grantee should select a matrix code that fit the activity the best. So it is important to use correct and specific matrix code. We'll go through some setup rules. We don't want you to lump up all the activities together. So use specific matrix code. For example, if you provide services for the senior people, use A.5.2 senior services instead of A.5.2, the general public services code. We do have matrix code definition that posted on HUDexchange.info. I encourage you to use that when you set up an activity and choose matrix code. Use that as reference. It will help you how to set up activity and which matrix code to use. So if you're unsure what matrix code fits to your activity, consult with your field office CPD rep and they can help you. And you can also, of course, submit your question to HUDexchange. Next slide, please. So let's go through some rules for setting up activities. I hope you joined us on Monday. We had a session to cover how to set up activities and reporting accomplishments. So, but I wanted to go through some rules again. One general rule for setting up activity is based on activity you set up, the information you entered in IDIS, you, HUD field office and HUD headquarters or even OIG, they will be able to determine whether this activity is eligible and met national objective. So basically you do want to break down all the activities. CDBG CV funds are commonly used for public services activity, business assistance. So I will just focus on these two types of activities. Our rules for the public services activity is one service program per activity. So for example, the rental assistance or say emergency grant payment is most commonly used for CDBG CV program. And also you have another type of service like services for homeless people. So those actually are two types of service. So you need to set up two activities, one for rental assistance, which we call subsistence payment. And the other one will be services for homeless people. So there'll be two activities. And for the business assistance, I know it is very popular for the CDBG CV activity, funded activities. And it is, you probably provide assistance to a lot of businesses. However, we do require you set up one activity per business because each business needs to fulfill its own requirement, whether create job or retain job, or like if provide goods and services, they have its own service area. So one business per activity, especially for the business business that received direct financial assistance. So we do have rules for every type of activities, and those rules are posted on HUD Exchange. So I highly recommend you to go on HUD Exchange to read those rules. It will help you to set up activity and also help you to avoid OIG monitoring findings or HUD monitoring findings. Next slide, please. Also, we required if you have housing rehab or homeownership assistance activities, and you also provide housing counseling services in conjunction with those housing rehab or homeownership assistance activities. If the housing counseling met definition at 2 CFR 5.100, those activity has to be set up separately. So even like normally they consider as activity delivery, well, but we require you to set up separate activity for the housing counseling activities. We do have separate matrix code for housing information and referral services, which is A.5.2. So if you provide like housing information or referral services in conjunction with your housing rehab or down payment assistance, or even now like a rental payment assistance, most likely you probably won't meet definition of 5.100, and then that's probably considered like housing information and referral services. So if you provide referral services only, that'll be A.5.2. But if it's in conjunction with rental assistance, that can be combined with A.5.2. Next slide, please. How often you enter the data in IDIS? CDBG program requires once a year, so you have to enter accomplishments for every program year. Sometimes you even don't have accomplishments because activity is still ongoing, and you just enter the progress in the accomplishments and narrative field in IDIS. But we do recommend you report more frequently so you don't have heavy reporting at the end of the program year. And also we can track your progress more easily through IDIS. So you can report it either quarterly or like as activity completed. And if you use a sub-grantee, I do recommend you collect data more frequently, like quarterly or semi-annually instead of once a year, because that will help you lift your reporting at the end of the year. Next slide, please. So we implemented some tools to improve the program oversight. That's due to 2011 OIG audit. IDIS flags activity may have implementation problem and requires grantees to submit justification to the field office. So what type of activities we flag? We flag 3 types of activities. The first, activities do not have draws for a year. Second, activities did not report accomplishments for 3 years. And also if activities draw down 80% of its funded amount, but have not reported any accomplishments, we flag them. Next slide, please. So I wanted to emphasize It is management tool, not a compliance tool. We just flag this activity. We think this activity is moving, may have problem, but it doesn't necessarily have problem. So when this activity flagged, we do want you to submit remediation action plan for every activity that flagged within 3 months from the date that activity is flagged. And field office will review each remediation plan within 3 months, the remediation plan submitted. And also those IDIS automatically flag the activity is ongoing basis. IDIS actually check the activity every day. So it's ongoing basis. It's not like quarterly or like monthly. So it's every day. Next slide, please. For every at-risk activities, the grantee needs to submit remediation plan. It needs to explain why the activity is delayed and submit action plan for resolving the delay, and also provide the timeline for completing action plan, normally within 6 months. So we want short, like give us a short timeline for moving the activity forward. It's not, the action plan is not ask you to complete activity or cancel the activity. It's just ask you, give us timeline to complete action plan. One thing you do need to know, if activities flagged as at risk, but if during this period the activity is canceled or completed, and then the activity will be dropped out from at-risk list, and the remediation plan is no longer needed. Next slide, please. So in the remediation plan, the grantee needs to provide the short-term action to move the stalled activity forward to resolve the delay. So at minimum, you need to provide a timeline for draw additional funds or report accomplishments or outlines when the activity can be completed. It's not, again, it's not require you to complete or cancel the activity within 6 months. It's just ask you to provide your action plan and complete action plan within 6 months. So for example, if you have housing rehab program, it have not have draws for a year and have not meet a national objective. So your action plan could be, say, we will post advertisement on the newspaper, and when you're going to post that on newspaper. So that's your action plan. It's not super complicated. It's not to say when you can like sell those house. You guarantee to sell this house within 6 months. We just need to know what action you needed to take to push those activity move forward. Next slide, please. You can also use, the grantee can see the at-risk activities on the at-risk. And the other thing you can use is PR59 report, which is CDBG at-risk activities dashboard. So on this report, it lists all the activities that have been flagged and whether the field office approved your remediation plan or not, and also any plan that pending from field office approval. And also we give sort of like a warning, like if the activities pending at risk. It also included on the screen and in this report. Next slide. We have resources for at-risk activities, which is we have instructions for the grantees, and we have QA related for those at-risk activities as well. So if you have questions, you can go to this site to review those documents. Next slide, please. I do want to point out we have some very useful IDIS reports that can be used as reference to track the activity. We have PR03 report, which is called CDBG Activity Summary Report, that lists all the activities that open during the or completed during the program year you selected. So it is very useful report. The other report is PR23 report. This report is linked to your keeper report. So you can review that report to compare with your keeper. The other three report is CDBG Financial Summary Report, Activity Summary Report by Selected Grant, PR26 CDBG CV Financial Summary Report. Those three reports are required when you submit your keeper. So get familiar with that. The other two reports I want to point out is PR29 report, which is Cash on Hand Quarterly Report, one for CDBG and one for CDBG CV. Cash on Hand report is like its name, it's required to submit quarterly. So I will cover Cash on Hand report in next slides. So let's move on to next slides, please. So I do want to review Cash on Hand report because it's relatively new and a lot of grantees not really unfamiliar, is unfamiliar with that. So entitlement communities, insular areas and Hawaii counties are required to submit Cash on Hand quarterly report for the CDBG and CDBG CV programs. So you have to submit Cash on Hand report for CDBG and CDBG CV separately. So below is the screenshot for the Cash on Hand quarterly report. The CDBG and CDBG CV on the same screen. So one column is for CDBG and one column is for CDBG CV. So states grantee actually are not required to submit Cash on Hand quarterly report, only entitlement. So Cash on Hand items are divided into three sections based on fund type. One is federal cash, which is grant funds, and then program income and revolving funds. The local LA funds is considered grant funds. So that's included in section 1. So some people asked whether this report allows negative number. The answer is no. So most of the time, the negative number comes from grantee using the general funds. So if you used general funds to pay to the subrecipient, at that period, do not report on Cash on Hand report. You report that disbursement on Cash on Hand report when you draw down CDBG funds from line of credit and reimburse myself. So at that time, you put that number as drawdown and disbursement in Cash on Hand report. So And for the CDBG CV, CDBG CV does not have program income, so it's relatively simple. You just report grant funds. And the other thing I wanted to point out, on this screen, there's only one submit button. So when you submit, it looks like you submit both. So if you only submit one set of data for CDBG, and then you can save the report, and then when you have CV data, come back into the CV data submitted. However, you can submit one set of report first, and then come back, edit cash on hand report, enter the second set. And also, if you find there's a mistake in the report and you wanted to edit the data, you can come back, edit the report. So even past the period. So if you find a mistake 3 months after, you can come back, click that report and edit the report. Next slide, please. So there's tips for reviewing PR 29 report, which is cash on hand report. Cash on hand report mainly used to check the compliances with requirement at 2 CFR 200.305 federal payment. So federal payment requires grantees, 1, use program income first before you draw down grant funds. Second, you need to limit the time from draw down your grant funds from federal government to disperse to the grantee. So we'll check whether you have large program income, you use program income from before you're using grant funds. And we also can use this report to check whether program income and revolving funds have been reported in IDIS. And if you always have, if the grantee always have large cash balance, that is one thing, probably signal you have have grant advance, and you probably have long period of time hold those grant in your hand, not dispersed. So you wanted to probably change your method to draw down the funds to limit the time to from draw down grant funds and disperse for the use. We also can check whether your revolving loan is active. So if you have a revolving loan balance and from quarter to quarter never dispersed, you wanted to ask yourself if you still need this revolving loan. If you don't need those revolving loans, you probably wanted to dissolve revolving loans, turn that into program income, and you can use for other eligible activities. And the other important thing you want to be sure is the data needs to be consistent from quarter to quarter. Normally, the quarter 1 cash on hand balance will become the beginning balance for the quarter 2. So the program income balance is the same. Quarter 1 program income balance will become the beginning balance for the quarter 2. And revolving funds is the same, so on and so. So the data must be consistent. It's not like a random number you entered. Next slide, please. I do want to discuss PR 26 CDBG financial summary report, because this report you have to submit along with your paper. So we do have detailed instruction on how to exchange. So if you have question or any doubt, you can read this instruction first, or you can consult with your CPD rep. PR26 financial summary report has 5 parts. One, summary of CDBG resources, and second part with CDBG expenditure, and 3 is low mod benefit test, 4 is public service calculation, 5 is planning admin cap calculation. Next, please. So part 1 is summary of CDBG fund. Majority of the data, like line 2 grant funds, program income, funds returned to line of credit, grant funds is automatically poured. The program income, revolving funds, those funds are returned to line of credit. If you enter into IDIS, it should be automatically poured into this report. So report your program income on time. We do require grantees to report program income as you received. So you probably want to establish like some timeline to report program income in IDIS, like monthly, so on. This session will accumulate all the resources you have for the program year. The line 1, the unexpended funds from prior program year, that should be the line you draw the dollar figure from your prior year PR26 report. So when you run PR26 report, you do want to pull out your PR26 report from prior year. Next slide, please. So this part is give you overview of total expenditure for the CDBG funds. It's dispersed, all the funds dispersed for different category. For the admin funds, low mod benefit, for the funds paid to Section 108 repayment. So that gave you total expenditure you expended for the program year. Next slide, please. So part 3 is calculate your low mod benefit percentage. Remember, all the CDBG funds have to meet, CDBG funds have to benefit 70% low mod persons. So this area, we calculate how much funds have been used to benefit low mod income persons. That's include the funds for the housing, for the limited clientele, low mod jobs, low mod areas. So if in the end, your percent of benefit to the low mod persons is greater than 70, and then you are fine. But if it's below 70, you are not in compliance with overall low mod benefit. But of course, it's subject to like whether you, like your certification period, whether you used 1 year, 2 year, or 3 years. Next slide, please. Part 4 is public service cap. So for regular formula CDBG funds, no more than 15% of grant amount plus program prior year program income can be used for public services. So this portion is to check whether you are in compliance with public services cap. There's complication for 2019 and 2020 public services because 2019 and 2020 funds, if used to respond to the coronavirus, and that are excluded from public services cap. So that require you However, in the PR26, for now, we did not exclude that from Part 4 section. So it require you to enter the justification to subtract 2019 and 2020 funds that are used to respond to the coronavirus. Next slide, please. So how to determine how much you used 2019 and 2020 funds to respond to coronavirus. So we have a line 27 detail, and that lists all the vouchers, like which grant used, whether that activity is responded to the coronavirus. So in this section, if you have yes, and that voucher is used 2019 and 2020 funds, and then you can deduct that from your Part 4 and exclude that from public services calculation. Next slide, please. So Part 5, another important cap is planning and admin obligation cap. So we require for the regular CDBG program year obligation cap is no more than 20% of the grant and program income can be used for planning and obligation cap. Next slide, please. So we do have two caps for planning and admin. One is obligation cap, and you can use a regular PR26 financial summary report to calculate that cap. That is 20% grant plus current year program income. And the other cap is called origin year expenditure cap that applied to 2015 and later grants. So no more than 20% of grant funds can be used for planning and admin activities during the lifetime of grant. So you can use PR26 activity summary by selected grant to check this cap. Next slide, please. I wanted to go through how you calculate the admin planning obligation test and an original year expenditure test. So what is the difference? I use this example to demonstrate the difference. So in 2018, you got $1 million grant funds. In 2019, you have $1 million of grant funds, and 2020 you got a 1.2 million. And in 2018, you have program income 250,000, and in 2019 you have million, and 2020 you have 100,000. So program year obligation cap for 2018, that means it's 1 million plus 250,000 program income that yield to 250,000 for the planning and admin obligation cap. However, for 2018 grant original year expenditure cap, that's 20% of your grant amount. That's 200,000. So same thing for the 2019 is million plus $1 million program income that give you 400,000 for program year obligation for 2019, and for origin year that give you 200,000. So down below, and we'll see how you expended. In 2018, you spent 150,000 from 2018 grant for your admin and planning. And in 2000, and the program income, you spend 50,000. So total, you spend 200,000 in program year 2018. So 200,000, that's your program year obligation cap. So you're within compliances because your 2018 obligation cap is 250. And then in 2019, you spent 10,000 from 2018 grant and 150,000 from 2019 grant. And it spent 240,000 program income. So total in program year 2019, you spend 400,000. So for program year obligation test, that's 400,000 towards to program year obligation test. Then in 2020, again, 10,000 from 2018 grant, 10,000 from 2019 grant, and 200,000 from 2020 grant. So, and 20 plus 20,000 from program income. So total is 240,000 for the program year 2020. However, for the original year, after 3 years for 2018 grant is 117,000. And for 2019 grant is 160,000. And for 2020 grant is 200,000. So those 117, 116, and 200, that's towards to each year's origin year grant expenditure test. So you compare 118 from 118,000 to 200,000 for the 2018 grant and 116,000 to the 2019 grant. So that's how you calculate your obligation test and expenditure test. Next slide, please.
Hey, Puping, I wanted to let you know we only have 3 minutes left, and there are a few questions and some really great ideas going into the feed there as well. If you want to take a moment to talk about that before we let everybody go.
Okay.
I know we're close to the end of your slides. Let's flip to maybe a final slide. Is there a contact information slide or?
Yeah. Let's go to the resource.
Okay.
Page, please. Yeah, we have IDIS resources page. So all the guidance I talked about, instructions I talked about is on this page. If you have questions, you can consult to this page or submit your question to the IDIS AAQ. So now let's go through the question.
Yeah, no problem. All right. So reminding folks, we are looking for your questions anywhere you put them, but please do put them in the blue Q&A if you scroll down. And we'll talk about the ideas thread that's going on. It's pretty cool stuff, actually. So a couple questions. First question, for owner-occupied rehab activity setup, when there's just one activity and you're aggregating the units, should you put the address for every unit or just the first address assisted?
The answer for single unit, you can aggregate and you do require to enter every addresses that you rehab.
Next question. What
Can we
made,
put this question into Zoom? Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, there's not many questions, but the ideas will be fun to look at. If we could pull those onto the screen.
Okay.
Great. We'll get to that in just a second. Let's answer this one last question here. Matrix codes. What matrix code should we use for installing broadband infrastructure, such as laying down lines? Would O3Z be okay?
It depends.
Yeah, it does depend. So we have, so O3Z for everybody's benefit is like other public facilities, and we don't have a matrix code that's just broadband. There's also 11, which is for privately owned utilities. Could be an argument made there, I suppose. Also, there's rehab, right? So if it's done on the property, homeowner's property or rental property, there's it kind of switches over from being a public improvement to being a rehab for that unit potentially. So there are various things that you have to take into consideration when matching up which matrix code you choose. In the various components of your program, you may have to break it out. Broadband's also like a three-legged stool, right? So there's also training that could be done as a service for internet and different things like that. So let's jump to the IDIS. This is pretty cool stuff. So if we go to some of the more popular ones, I see some votes here for one that we initially put in, which was to allow the comp plan suite to allow for you to put in more text. I see other comments in here about being able to paste in from Word, also to upload Excel tables, and remove that limit on text. That's a very popular one, 9 votes. And then I love this one. I don't know who put this in, but this is excellent. So it's one of the annoying things that I've seen in the system as well, is that it has those modules at the top, right? You got planning and funding and everything's broken out. So you have to navigate across. And I think that had 8 votes. If you want to scroll back up for me. Yeah, the easier navigating between screens. You all know what that one's about. So I got 9 votes. More capability to allow pasting from Word. There's another one in here too that was interesting. Somebody suggested allowing uploads of documents to each activity instead of just the comp plan. It's really the only place that we allow a document upload.
I like it.
These are great. These are great suggestions. Bing, do you want to react to any one of these here?
Yeah, I actually really like to upload activity information into IDIS, because that's make everybody's life seems like for monitoring purpose, even for grantee, for record of retention period, those type of things, that's really helpful, I think. And I also like the navigation one.
Yeah.
That myself is annoyed.
I know, right? Let's scroll down a little bit here to, let's see. So there's one that's 8 votes. It's in quality of reporting. Often the reports are just wrong. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes the reports are wrong. We try to keep these things up to date and do maintenance. What makes it also very confusing for folks, and me included, is reconciling information across multiple reports. And it's really nuanced because you have reports that are run that are based on which project and activity was included in, and then therefore which program year that project was associated with. And then you have so you have almost like a plan year, and then a program year, and a calendar year, and a fiscal year. There's far too many years, right? So when you try to reconcile across these different reports that look at different angles, let's say, it can be extremely difficult. So it's definitely well taken. So thank you for that comment. I like this one about grantees having to use their own internal system and also use HUD, and being able to not have to enter things twice. That's a well taken point as well. We definitely know that that's happening, and it makes sense why it happens. But I think there's ways we can provide better resources at HUD too, right? So
Right. Currently, we have grant. We actually do link. It's called EDI system. They do upload data from their own system to IDIS. So they actually sort of like a mirrored data elements in their own system. And then EDI is a third party vendor though. So you have to purchase software and then you upload those data like periodically from your own system to IDIS. We actually do from time to time, even when we like update IDIS, so we update the, we configure EDI as well to update whatever the new elements. So like if you want, you can look into these options to use EDI. I think LA County, some large grantees use it.
okay, well, I want to make sure everybody has time for break before the next session. We did eat into the next hour a little bit. We do apologize for that. I think it was worth it though. This was a good session, and I really love these ideas that everyone submitted. So I want to thank you very much to contributing to our development efforts. Knowing what's important to you can help us make funding decisions when it comes to our IT budget. So we do appreciate it.
Thank you everyone for participating.